angel in heaven. The angels looked down every afternoon in the evening when God would say, well, I'm going to go down and walk around with Adam and Eve and see what they're up to today. And I believe that the angels, that was their test. That was their chance then to be tested in their relationship. And you know what Satan said? I will put myself on the throne. Why does he get to have those two people loving him and not me? It was a test of their relationship. And Satan and about 1/3 of all the angels rebelled against God and were cast out of heaven. And where did they get cast to? Anybody know where Satan got cast? To the earth. And where did he go? He went after Adam and Eve. So he came to Adam and Eve and he began to tempt them to go to that tree, because see, he had failed his test, he had broken his relationship, and now the only way he could get back at God was to get back at God's creation. So he comes to Adam and Eve, he tempts them. Eve ate first in all reality, but can I tell you something, men? You know who gets charged? Who gets charged for eating first? Adam does. Eve ate first, but Adam was responsible for Eve. Sir, husband, father, you're responsible. Don't lay your spirituality off on your wife and say, well, if she wants to take the kids. No, it's your job. It's your job. And that was the very first one. Eve ate first, gave it to her husband. I can't go there. Oh, man, I'd like to go there and tell you what I think happened right there. Can I just tell you what I think happened right there real quickly? This is just my picture in my mind. I believe the devil kept saying, look how pretty that fruit is. I believe he probably went up there and shined up a couple of whatever they were. And I believe Eve said, wow, they are. That is pretty fruit, and I'm sure it tastes really good. I made it an apple, if you heard that. I believe she bit that apple, and her relationship with God was severed out of her disobedience. And I believe she turned and looked at her husband with the same motivation that Satan had looked at her. And I believe Adam looked at his wife and saw in her eyes something bad. She was the only other woman on the earth, and he loved her. And I believe Adam put his head down, walked over, picked that piece of fruit, said, I'm not going to go through life separated and broken. And he ate that fruit too and plunged the world into sin. Here, let's read about it, all right? We ought to include a little Bible, don't you think? So thus far it's been a story. Let's see what it says. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew they were naked. They were innocent. They were so innocent that they didn't even wear clothes and didn't care. Be like in our bedroom, you know, the most intimate places. They didn't even care. And then it says they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. And they heard of the sound of God, the Lord God, walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. Then the Lord God called to Adam. Now, you know, he knew, but it had to be them. The Lord God called to Adam and said, Adam, where are you? And he said, this is Adam answering, I heard your voice, and I was afraid because I was naked. I didn't want you to see me naked, so I hid. And God said, who told you you were naked? They didn't even know the difference before. He says, have you eaten from the tree which I commanded that you should not eat? God knew. God knew. The relationship that day between mankind and God was severed. We're going to read it later in the New Testament where it explains that even more. But can I tell you something? There is no way for that relationship to get put back together unless God does something to bring us back, because we're the ones who walked away. Mankind is the one who made the choice and sinned. And so it wasn't God's bad, it was man's bad. And we are separated from God. God wanted desperately to have friends who were genuine. Isn't that something? You say God doesn't need anything. No, he didn't need it. He desired it. He wanted a creation who would be his friend. You say, why do you know that? I know it because we sang the song, I am a friend of God. That proves it, doesn't it? That doesn't prove it, but we're going to prove it. So hold steady. Well, if it was God's job, if it was God's call, if it was God's desire to rebuild this relationship, then he would have to do it. And I want to now introduce a man to you by the name of Abraham. It doesn't start off Abraham. He gets his name changed later. It's Abram. But Abraham, beginning in Genesis chapter 12, now we just read from Genesis chapter 3, so 8 chapters later and a few thousand people later, God goes to a place called Ur of the Chaldees. Are you familiar with Ur of the Chaldees? Babylon. You know, we've been fighting a little war over there. It's the country today of Iraq. Modern day Iraq is where Ur of the Chaldees were. God looks down at an Iraqi and says, that just may be the guy. I'm gonna try to start my relationship with man back through Abraham. Abram at that time. He calls him Abraham later because he puts part of his name, Yah, out of Yahweh. He puts Yah into Abram and calls him Abraham, Abra. That's, never mind, that was Hebrew. You don't need that, do you? Just like Adam and Eve, there had to be a test. See, you all know we all have a test, right? There's a test at the end, there's a test at the beginning. You don't have to follow God. You're totally free not to follow God. But here's the deal. It's your choice. Don't blame God. Don't say God did something. It's your choice if you do not follow God. And if you do not follow God and you're disobedient and you break the relationship, then that's your call. And that's been the history. What I'm showing you here has been the history all throughout time. So Abraham had a test. I think his test was maybe even harder because this is what God says to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. He said, Abraham, I want you to get up and I want you to leave your country and I want you to leave your father's house and I want you to go to a land that I will show you after you leave. Go first, faith and obedience, then I'll show you where you're going. Wow, how many of you would ever just pack up and leave not knowing where you're going? How many of you can listen to my voice and tell I'm not from Iowa? I had a lady the other day said, so you've lived here long? And I said, yeah, I was born here. She knew better than that. I said, no, I'm from Tennessee. And I didn't have all that much of a southern accent. I sounded like a country and western singer. So I moved to Mississippi to perfect my southern accent. For 11 years, I lived in Mississippi. And one day, very similar test, God said, get up, get out of your house, leave your family, and go to a place that I will show you. I know you've never heard of it. It'll take you a while to find it on the map, but I picked a simple 4-letter